Hi, I'm Nicolette.
And I'm Sean.
And welcome to the Graveyard Shhift.
In this podcast, we talk about true crime mysteries and the paranormal.
This is where we dig up new dirt on old stories that you may or may not have heard before.
We try to gather as many facts as possible and then put our own spin on what may have happened.
We don't gather all the facts, just enough to tell the story.
So if we've missed something important, let us know.
But don't be a dick about it. And please, keep your private detectiveness to yourself.
Other than that, kick back, relax, and welcome to the Graveyard Shhift.
Don't forget to like and subscribe. Hey guys, I'm Nicolette, and as you may have noticed, Sean is not here. This is Laura Rishell, and we are going to be talking about a very special case that has me baffled, and it is the Harold Henthorn case. And she's going to tell you. So this happened in her family. Harold Henthorn swept her aunt off of her feet, right?
Literally. We'll find out. Mm-hmm. Yep.
And why don't you tell us the story? Because this is really quite weird. How did he weasel his way into your family, first off?
It's a great word. Weasel. Yeah, I think it's really interesting because I come in a perspective viewpoint. I am my father and mother. I am the daughter of them, and they have known Harold for 30 years. They went to college with him.
What?
Yeah.
Where? Okay, so where did they all go to college?
James Madison University.
And where is that?
Virginia.
Oh, okay.
I believe. Oh. Yeah. A lesson to know more about your family. Dive in. It'll help you empathize. Yeah, it was James Madison University, and that's where they met Harold.
Okay.
As well as where Harold met Lynn.
Okay, so, and who is Lynn exactly?
Lynn is the first wife of Harold.
Okay. So, and she's not related to your family, right?
So she is.
Oh, she is.
So this is how Harold is my uncle.
Oh, boy.
Is by marriage, not by blood relation.
Right, obviously.
Yeah, and I used to say luckily, but I do understand how if you're related to someone by blood who's done awful things, it doesn't mean
that's worse.
You're awful, but I get where that's harder to come back from.
Yep.
Yeah. And I've heard like the FBI even has like they look back on if you're blood related to certain bad things too. And I'm like, that's tough just because my, anyways.
I don't know if that constitutes like personality traits being transferred to people.
But it is that interesting question where I wonder about nature, nurture, free will, kind of those the thirds that make up a human being possibly.
Right. Exactly.
So Harold met my parents in college, I think through a Christian organization outreach stuff.
Already mad about it. I'm already mad about it. Okay, go.
He resembled a great Christian man. And
gives Christians a
and
bad
again,
name.
this is through second party information, right? Because I was not born yet.
Right.
And yet this is me talking on behalf of my perspective and what I can talk about in the first point of view and what I went through once this case and I've known him since I was born.
Yeah.
Right. And so
yeah, this has got to be really strange for you because you've known him all your life.
Yes, I think that's a huge part of why it's taken me a while to discuss things too much, as well as get my perspective, my story out there with it.
You guys were close, right? Like he was your uncle.
Yeah, and to be honest, I looked at him for a while as a father figure.
Wow.
Yeah.
That just gave me chills. I did not like those chills.
Which is why there's some interesting aspects because he worked to also make himself that figure.
Ooh.
And there's a really interesting stories to how he did that.
That's just giving me creeps all over.
He was creepy. Is still alive.
Wow.
Definitely, yeah. Hope you hear this, Harold. You're creepy.
Nice.
In prison.
Yes. Good.
Yes.
Good. Okay. So, so your parents met him in college. How did he meet Lynn exactly?
And that's something I actually couldn't try to grab from my memory source. And I think it was through a Christian the Christian standpoint, because
Okay.
Lynn, my Aunt Lynn, who was my blood. So Lynn was my dad's sister.
Okay.
So she was, my dad, that was his sister, Lynn.
Yeah, yeah.
A fiery redhead. So it's
Oh,
fun
cute.
that I'm talking about
Great.
this with a redhead. But that is the beauty of, like, she was just this spitfire from what I know, and just a light for the family, and my dad's family.
Right.
And she brought my dad's family apparently to God.
Oh.
And so she was the person who brought everyone around, in this light. And so,
That's great.
yeah, I think there was
Wonderful
something
to-
about her that was, she was, and she later
a
became
beacon of light.
Yeah, and later
Yeah.
became even a social worker and worked with sign language and even in prison.
Oh, that's amazing.
Connections that are later supernatural that we'll get to. That's really interesting.
Okay, very good. Yay.
And so, I just know that my mom, a big thing and why the betrayal sides is you get to these aspects of the longevity and how you've known someone
Yeah.
since I was born or since my mom and dad were just in college,
Right.
all really young.
And they trusted him.
And they
Everybody
trusted him, and then they approved of him
Yeah.
when marrying Lynn.
Right, obviously.
And
Yeah.
so therefore, all through college, that's when, then Harold and Lynn get married, and it seems
Okay.
like a great match.
Well, it seems like it. So kind of go from there after the wedding happened and they're
Right.
settling into their married life.
Yeah, this is what's
what you
interesting is
understand.
it's all, from points of views of me being a curious-minded being. I'm one of 4 girls, and yet I've been the most involved in this since the beginning, I think due to my mindset. And so it is interesting why I even am now doing this is the first time I've really done this because I used to love all of those things.
Yeah.
And I think it's what geared me to be able to handle it in
good.
some ways with a certain mindset. My background, my degree ended up being criminal justice.
That's amazing.
It helps that every semester I had to reschedule my finals with my professors because I was flying to Denver for a murder trial.
Holy crap. I just got mad chills right
So college was a very different experience for me.
Oh.
Because it wasn't
I can imagine.
boozing and sleeping around. It was... it could have been, and it would have been maybe more fun, but that's okay.
now. You had more adult things to go through.
Yeah, I did. And that was how it was meant to be, and I'm at peace with that. And so it was, and it helped that I was in some art degree telling my art professors, and they wouldn't understand as much.
Yeah.
It helped that media had a good influence in some cases and in some bad cases on this trial.
Yeah.
But the media side helped with the validity of me and my excuses to go away and my need to. So I do thank you to the professors, if any of you one day see this, that it's all legit and it all happened, as you know.
It did.
And
It did.
I still have student loans.
Oh, lovely. Maybe those can be forgiven because of all the things she went
Maybe
through.
can I send this to my loan officer or people? You see what I went through?
Just
Empathy.
let me skate by with,
Yeah.
on the student loan thing.
I'm a victim. No, my aunts were, and we'll get into that.
Yes.
And humor is a great deflection.
Absolutely. we know that because we've talked about it before, and I can't go through a serious story without laughing at something. So
Yeah. Well, here's the beauty of, I think, why people are involved and love these sort of things. Like, I loved CSI, Criminal Minds.
yes.
I made murder cases when I was a kid. Like,
you did.
my goodness, I still have the box in my room right now that says Laura's Detective Crime Stuff.
That's so cute.
Labeled by my mother.
Oh, that's so
But it's the same
cute.
box for a reason, because it's something that I always was intrigued by. I think would like to solve the little investigator in me. And so it is really interesting that you watch those things and you never think your life will then unfold into it.
Yeah.
Ever.
No.
And you don't want it to. And I wouldn't wish it on anyone.
No.
I wouldn't. But it definitely is an intriguing statement that I was watching Criminal Minds when the FBI really did knock on my door.
Oh my God, that's so scary. That is such a scary thing.
And I asked them, do you want to come inside? Said, you probably don't really need my permission. And I said that, I guess, as a joke, but not really knowing. And then my mom wasn't home yet, right? So then I
Lord.
invited them to sit down on the couch
Oh.
while Criminal Minds was on.
Oh, nice. But they're investigators, so they're kind of like, oh, this is funny.
Yeah, I had to. They weren't laughing because it was a very serious thing that they
Sure.
were coming to the door for.
Absolutely.
But again, here I am like, Hey,
How's it going, guys?
call my mom. She'll be here soon.
Oh, man. Okay, so they came to your door. How old were you at this time?
Yes, so that's a good point. Timelines, because it does get a little confusing as far as it goes, because this, for any of you who don't know what's going on, this was my Uncle Harold, who is now in prison. Should I give the finality of it?
Yeah.
For the murder of his second wife.
Yes, because the murder of Lynn never was. He was never caught for that one during the time that happened. So he went on to marry a second time and got caught with the second murder. Fun.
Right. And then that's what's, still my family, and grieves over. You wish you had enough possible discernment and awareness to question more,
right?
To not trust as much. Being a Christian family who grieves over this man who lost a wife.
Right.
He's a widower now.
Yeah.
And who are we to, again, this is a perspective. I was only 1 year old when my Aunt Lynn died.
Oh, no.
So I've learned her through story, not through memory.
Yeah. Yeah. So you never knew your Aunt Lynn.
Never knew her in the sense where the last time I think parents did say they saw her live was visiting me as their newest addition when I was a baby. Wow. And there's some extra creepy stuff that Harold did around that time.
Like what? Tell me.
Yeah. So Lynn dies in 1995 by getting crushed by a car.
What the hell?
In a sad accident.
Okay, so how do they speculate that this sad accident happened with this car?
That Harold's story, which later became many different stories.
Of course it did.
Was that Lynn, they had a soft tire, one statement, a flat tire, another statement.
Oh, interesting. Wait,
Interesting.
So that's supposed to mean the same thing, I guess.
Apparently
Soft
to
tire.
investigators who closed the case in 6 days.
What? I'm mad.
Right. And so Harold and Lynn were driving in Colorado.
Okay.
This is where this is, the Rocky National Park.
So they're
Estes State Park.
Estes State Park.
Estes State Park.
So are they living in Colorado?
Yes.
Okay.
Harold made that happen with both wives. He took them away from their family on purpose.
Oh my God.
He knew.
We hear about a lot of within this true crime world. We hear a lot about abusers taking the people that they are kind of conditioning away from their family. This is cult-like behavior. This is like cult leader behavior in a lot of ways.
Oh, that is really true. That's
So-
really interesting.
So it's very narcissistic. It's very like your life should be all about me.
Yeah,
thing.
and I think it's really intriguing too to look at both cases in '95 versus 2012. That's when both of the women passed away, and even the technological sides that did that separation aspect more. A lot of parallels will draw to these women and the way he also kept. I don't know if routine's the right word, but similar things he did with both women.
Ooh. Okay.
And so both women he did take away from their families. So they're in Colorado now, away from their family.
Right.
I'm sure they see Lynn only around Harold.
Right.
Right? Because he'll always be there. He's in every home video, which is really great to look back on.
That's horrible.
Yeah, it taints a lot.
Yeah,
it's
I
kind
bet.
of, that's what I wrote in my impact statement. There's a lot to that aspect about.
Wow.
When you look back in the past, it should give you a little more
joyful memories.
joy.
Yeah.
Most of us have hard pasts, and that's what keeps us in victimization.
Well-
but you compare it with murder and betrayal, and it makes it a little harder to get past some shit.
Yep.
Excuse me.
Totally understand. It's fine.
Fine. So yeah, I think so. They're in Estes State Park, Colorado. It's 1995. This is also for you youngins out there when cell phones weren't around.
Oh, yeah.
So all of a sudden, flat tire, soft tire, whatever it may be on the story level, they pull over.
Okay.
He says he needs to change the tire.
Okay.
Now, this is from other points of view who came up on the scene, again, from his story and from viewpoints of what he didn't expect would be at the certain time of hour he did it in a certain remote area in Estes Park. He probably didn't want anyone to come up on anything
Well, of course.
until he called 911.
Of course.
And until event happen. And
Right.
so, but she then got out of the car without him knowing. They're out of the car as he's changing the tire, and it's on a jack. It's on
Okay.
this rigged kind of jack.
Okay.
The car. Kind of a boat jack, is I think he calls
Oh.
it. He needed to rig something to get the car hoisted to change the tire. And at the very moment that he throws the tire, the old tire, in the back of the trunk of
Right.
this SUV,
Right.
he didn't apparently know that Lynn had gone underneath the tire,
What?
underneath the wheel well, the empty area where the tire should have been.
Yeah.
And gone under it, contorted apparently underneath to grab a lug nut. I remember as a kid, for some reason, my memory always thought he told me it was chapstick. It's so weird how these things happen.
Weird.
It's so weird. My sister remembers the same. Us younger, like he told us maybe to identify to get us more. You know, you wonder the stories he changed with everyone.
Right.
To emotionalize it. But either way, she went underneath to grab. The most notable story was a lug nut
Sure.
that
because he
had
was
fallen
changing
to
a
help,
tire.
and that she was helping change the tire,
Okay.
which was the other story where they're thinking, why would she help? In 1995, that's when usually
Yeah, the
the
man
man
did.
does, and exactly.
Yeah.
And yet that's when the tire gets thrown in the back of the trunk, and Lynn was underneath, and it pops off the jack and crushes her.
Holy crap.
And so now she's underneath it, and it's crushing her.
Oh my God.
And she didn't die right away. It
course.
actually
Oh.
slowly suffocated her. What's
Holy
crazier
crap.
is that people did come up on the scene, and I'm
He
sure
was
he
not
didn't.
expecting that.
I
Oh
do
my
picture
God.
that terror he had. I like to picture
man.
how, because
How freaked out he might have been that people are now walking.
And so
up
there's
on this.
some testimony of what he was like during that time, and that's what gives you chills to wonder why wasn't that stated with the police report more, and why didn't they dig in further?
Yeah.
Because there was something on, I think, a race scale too. It was a Latina family, Latino and Latina. She was driving, and she's on, and you can look at all this on the media outlets that have covered this story. But bottom line, this was a time where one person came up, saw, and needed to first the family get her out from under the car, so help lift.
Yeah.
Which apparently he didn't seem as keen to want. Don't move her under. Didn't want that to happen.
Of course not.
So they don't listen to him. Get him to help her. I don't know if he really did lift. Get her out from underneath it. She's unconscious and everything. And this what made me cry in court was, it made me sick.
Yeah.
Was that moment where you realize his disregard for human life.
Yeah.
And this woman who he's known and been married to 12 years.
Whoa.
Methodically knows her family. It's close to all, and they asked him, it was cold, it's Colorado, to get his jacket and put it under her head while they're trying to resuscitate. He's not doing CPR or anything.
not.
And he goes and grabs crumpled up plastic that he found on the side of the road and puts it under her head.
What?
That just made me so mad.
Oh, that would make me very angry too, because it's not comfortable. They're trying to get you to put your jacket under.
This is your wife who's dying.
You would think you would,
and you would
care.
think you would take off any form of and
Yes.
support and be there to help, but red
it
flags.
sounds like he was just super disinterested. He had some sort of plan that he wanted played out, and it wasn't going the way he wanted it to.
Yeah, because
How
someone drove
horrible.
up on scene, and this is when I said there was no cell phones, but they went and had to drive away to go get the closest phone
Yeah.
and knock on someone's door and call 911. Which is so interesting to just think about
Yeah.
on a perspective viewpoint of even.
Nowadays, I don't think we would open the door to a lot of people.
Yeah,
Because,
or-
like somebody walking up and knocking on your door, you're like, "Who the hell is that?" You go peek through the people.
Yeah, or the emergency side of, I guess, being lucky to call 911 quicker.
Yeah.
Very interesting.
Yeah.
And so she did die in surgery. She didn't make it. And they're
So-
bred.
What did they say when she finally passed during surgery? Like, what did they say were the complications?
So this isn't something I could speak on, actually. All I know was that my mom gets a call, and she still can't talk about it well, because this was like my mom's best friend, even though it was my
yeah.
dad's sister.
Yeah.
My dad's sister, who he loved, of course, too, and my mom's best friend, very close to the family. And my mom and dad, they get this call that Lynn is gone. And, to receive the news of that, I know for my family, that sets a ripple of generations, I think, when anyone experiences a death of a close loved one.
Yeah.
But the shock factor too, right, of that.
Yeah.
Because they didn't know much. I think everyone had been called, and Harold used similar terminology, that there's been an accident. And, and then there wasn't much communication until the call of Lynn is gone.
Between the family and Harold.
Mm-hmm.
Wow. Oh, wow. Just, I don't understand. I mean, I guess I get it from... Sometimes you have to put yourself in the killer's shoes, in a sense, psychology-wise, just to kind of go, okay, I kind of get why they did that, but it's still really horrible. And
it's interesting because with the second wife's death, it was a whole other form of communication with what he did with the family.
Yeah.
And, well, literally by what I mean, during her being there dead...
Yeah.
Him, we now know, literally being there, not performing CPR.
Right.
Though
he said he did.
He said he did.
Yeah.
And they proved that her lipstick was not smeared.
So how could
And there was no way with other things that they connected that he was really performing CPR.
Right.
On the 911 call.
Right.
He was pretending.
And at that
he literally
time,
acted it out. But instead, he was saying his cell phone was bad on battery and didn't want to stay on with the telecommunicator much.
Yeah.
While meanwhile, he was actually texting... I think it was over 100 different people, like an insane amount of people while she was there next to him dead.
Are you kidding me?
But apparently not dead, right? Because she's
right.
trying to be resuscitated.
Oh my God. Okay.
One of them was my mother, which was the big one.
Holy
Because there's
crap.
this connection to him. I think my theory is he really loved to see the ripple and pain of the people around the people he killed. I had to settle on, because here's the big question. If Harold was, by not blood relation, my uncle through the first wife, why is my family even involved with the second wife and him?
Right. That, yeah, your questioning makes total sense.
And it's because Harold, for many reasons, loved to see the ripple of pain, I think, that he created. And another thing was he got insurance money.
Yeah.
Is the big key here. The insurance policies on the women's lives.
Right. So he took out, 2 or 3 life insurance policies now?
So the difference of policy versus person.
Oh, okay. Go ahead with that.
So I believe Lynn was just one policy that was over $620,000 to $40,000.
Right.
I'd need to revisit those numbers. It's been a bit.
Yeah.
My brain still tells me it was $640,000 on Lynn's life that he gained from her death.
Holy crap.
She was just a social worker.
Whoa.
And he was apparently a businessman at this point and working with geology or something.
Geology.
I know his degree was geology, something with rocks or oil, but at this point, we're still wondering what was Harold's true job.
Yeah.
Did he actually have one?
Yeah. Right.
Foreshadowing.
Okay.
$640,000 off of her death. I still believe a lot in our criminal justice system.
Yes.
And that they can really help a lot.
Yes.
And there's also the times that they're human and you realize where they had a lot of failure.
Yep.
And unfortunately, with my family's case, there was a lot of failure.
Of course.
Because this case truly shouldn't have been closed in 6 days. No. They should have let our family know, I believe, now knowing from the perspective I come in, that he had an insurance policy on her life.
Yeah.
This was with ING. I say this insurance company because this was a man named Neil Cresswell.
Who's that?
A man I feel like mentioning right now because he is free.
Oh.
And he's in his 80s now.
Oh, my goodness.
And he did Lynn and Harold's insurance policy.
Okay.
Tony and Harold's insurance policy, as well as Grace, Rochelle, and Harold's policy.
Wait,
Grace is my mother.
Oh. Oh.
Do you see a pattern
I'm
starting?
really scared right now. Okay, so there's one man who's taking care of setting out insurance policies on himself, one man and 3 different women.
Yeah, on a different timeline.
On a different line. Okay, so how soon after your aunt's death did Harold meet and marry Tony?
Good question. Because I was in that wedding.
Oh, no.
This is what's weird, right?
Oh, God.
His first wife's family was involved with his second wife's
That's so
wedding.
crazy.
Which now I realize Tony is his second wife. So we'll have Lynn for the first wife, Tony the second. She was such a classy Southern belle, beautiful woman.
Does she also have red hair?
No, she was blonde.
Oh, okay.
And, but fit the same characteristics that I know Harold looked for.
Oh, boy.
Which is, I really believe, which is somewhere where I get protective of on this dogmatic standards, maybe back then, was he picked up on women who knew that their duty maybe was as a Christian woman to marry and have kids and take care of house.
Yep. Very old-fashioned thinking.
Granted, Tony was a doctor.
Oh.
Very intelligent. So is Lynn. They're intelligent women. I'm not belittling their standard but they did have, as I know, through their family, through knowing even Tony, my non-blood related aunt, I knew better than my actual aunt.
Wow. Well, because you kind of grew up with her.
I grew up with her. I called her Aunt Tony. He's Uncle Harold. There's a lot there. So, the interesting nature that I know now, Harold really looked for women who I believe, this is my perspective, who would be very committed to him. That helps with the loyalty standard. That no matter how bad things were, they had a duty to stick with that marriage.
God, that makes a lot of sense.
I really believe that.
Oh, man.
And that helped where things probably felt off, as well as security and feeling like, there's that standard to be a married woman. And then I also can't imagine, because Tony ended up having a daughter with Harold. So that's the whole other side was I think Harold killed Lynn fast at this point because she and him, my mom said, were trying to have a kid. And I bet he wanted that. He wants more control. He wants more ability he loves that.
But she never had a kid, right?
But she was meant to stay on birth control.
What?
The first wife.
Wow, wait, why? If
Harold made...
What?
Until a certain point.
Wait, but when was that point going to happen?
I think when it was that she was often trying to, maybe back then, again, theorizing that the birth control affected her ability to have kids in her age and her standard or whatever, or maybe just that Harold's a sociopath and her body didn't want to take in dealing with that energy. I don't know, maybe fear or whatever it may be.
Right.
She wasn't able to produce a child for him, and now Lynn's dead. Now Harold does wait a perfect amount of time as a methodical murderer would.
Yeah.
He has to grieve. He wants to milk in the grievance of his wife dying.
Pardon me while I roll my eyes.
He's a grieving husband.
Sure.
And the keep with me on the bunny trails if you're doing well on this. The interesting parallels to some things that we now know. Again, this has been a huge media case. It's been in a book here. There's a lot, but this is stuff that they don't put out there, right?
I love that kind of stuff. This is the new dirt we talk about
The new
on the Graveyard
stuff.
Shift.
That's right. The Graveyard Shhift, we're getting to understand that this is a guy who, the first Christmas after Lynn died, this is a home video that's pretty sickening. And this is on Discovery Channel's episode that my mom did release. Home video footage is out there, a lot of him around us. But it is a weird one where he comes and he gives, this still hits me on a standard that he brings in as a gift to my grandparents. Now they have lost their daughter. These are grieving parents.
Right.
Their first Christmas without their child.
Of course.
No matter what,
It's hard. It's going to be hard.
And he gives them a picture of Lynn and says, this is what Lynn wanted you to have. and gives a framed picture. And this is what's on the home video, is him around my grandparents as they're just visibly wrecked. And he's just
Oh, that seems slimy to me.
when you know now that he murdered her,
Yeah.
it's really sickening to watch.
I bet.
I finally watched it again a month or so ago, and it was hard. It was hard. Because I'm sitting now on my mom's lap at the same Christmas. This is, I'm only a year, I'm brand new, so it's kind of my first kind of Christmas, I guess, as well.
Yep.
And interesting that he even presents me, gives me a baby outfit gift that said, Lynn got this for me. We should have it. So he has this way to present things so that there's extra empathy and pain, I think, that everyone's feeling. So the reason I brought up that is because he did the same exact thing to Tony's parents. After she died, he presented them with a picture and was comforting in the same scenario.
Oh my God.
It's just so freaky. He just... The parents, and I remember finding that out where we brought it up. We would have never known if we didn't, two families discuss things together.
So glad that you did.
Yeah, very close now.
Oh, that's crazy.
And so these modes of him just in milking the case of the grieving widower.
Dang. So how did your mom get wrapped up into this stuff?
That's a good question.
With Harold taking out an insurance policy on her. Like, how does that happen?
The reason I said I looked up to him as a father figure was I think I'm one of 4 girls. I think Harold also saw that as another
Aspect control?
Yes.
Perfect.
Yes. Absolutely.
I don't say perfect as like, great, awesome. No, that's like sarcasm, guys.
And he also saw where we, as a family, he could probably weasel his way in and separate us from our father.
Oh.
Because my dad, as all of us humans, have some rough patches of our character. My parents weren't exactly in a happy, Harold. 25 years my parents were married and separated. And around that separation time, I very much remember Harold and my mom being on long phone calls a lot, where my mom looked at him as truly a brother-in-law.
Oof.
And this is also when Tony's still alive, and we still think he's a loving uncle, brother-in-law.
Sure.
Who's a little weird.
Yeah.
Let's be honest. We still had weird
Vibes.
I remember times he'd call and we'd be like, Harold's calling. We're going to be stuck on the phone for an hour.
Oh.
He loved to talk.
I bet he did. He likes to worm his way into your brain.
Yeah. And so, but this is when, Haley has his daughter, loves to talk about his daughter and all the things she's doing. And, we never could get on the phone with Tony by ourselves. Tony would always have Harold in her family, never got her by herself.
Whoa.
Ever.
That is a narcissistic, sociopathic, manipulative way of doing things. If you're in a relationship like this, get the hell out.
Yeah. There's a reason I'm still single. No. No, I actually don't have a lot of betrayal with men. I love men, not some, in the sense of, but you do realize control.
Yes.
There's that word for me where I joke, if I see those now, like these systems of control. And I agree. I love that you say that, because if you're watching this, pay attention to your gut.
Absolutely.
This is why we're here talking about this, is because a lot of me and my family, there's moments you wish you did speak up more or pay attention to yourself and not just push it down, in certain aspects. And when you feel off, this is why pay attention.
Yeah.
Pay attention.
I mean, I've been in relationships where I felt like the guy was trying to control me, and every time I felt that, the Janet Jackson song "Control" came into my mind.
I love that.
And I would start singing that, and I'm like, I got to get out of here. So, I mean, and I believe in God too. So with all of my praying, a voice always came back that said, run. And I did. And I'm better for it.
Yep. And I'm such the fighter mentality, and there's a awareness where you don't have to fight.
No.
You just need to get out.
Just get out.
There's that biblical phrase, but it's like, don't stand, flee.
Yeah,
Like
absolutely.
this idea where it's like, sometimes we can't handle things, and that's okay because you don't know what you're up against.
Right.
Like Harold was a force of things, and that's where my mind goes. Maybe Tony didn't have capability to flee as easy because she had a daughter.
Yeah.
Now with Harold, and so
She probably also feared
her daughter and what Harold's capabilities were.
Absolutely.
I do believe that. I believe some people are like, well, you can tell. Why did they get to these? But there's so many microcosms.
knows.
And here I am, I thought he was a little weird, but he's still father figure kind of, because Harold was a father figure kind of. How? Because he hit what I thought, and he knew society tells you what a father figure should kind of be like.
Yeah.
I wasn't necessarily getting the financial side from my point of with my dad. When my parents left, we were left in kind of financial turmoil.
Right.
And guess who kind of stepped up to the plate a little bit for me and my sisters and my mother?
It was Harold.
Guess who told us to move to Denver?
Oh, no. Colorado.
He was
Red flag.
It's crazy when I think about gut, and thank God, I'll never forget. My mom and I were living above a garage. We lost everything.
It was just you two?
My two sisters had to move out and were trying to live together in LA, and my other sister moved in with my aunt and uncle in Texas. She moved to Texas to have a better high school experience, and she wanted to go there.
Good.
She wanted that. While I stayed back with my mom, hence why my perspective is very different, because I was around this since the beginning.
Wow.
And I'll never forget Harold propositioning, saying, Tony, he would always use Tony, and I think this would be a great idea for you to come to live in Colorado. And instead, we didn't feel that right about it, and my mom and I chose Texas.
Good.
Yeah, talk
I'm
about
thankful that
choices
you guys
you can
ran.
make when you listen to because my mom might not be here today.
Oh, my God.
Truly.
I am so glad you guys went the other way. Oof.
Yeah, and we started new in Texas, and he was mad. I remember he wasn't happy with my mom's choice to take a certain job thing to help with that.
Of course not.
Which happened to be around the same timeline when he was working on with her an insurance policy. Because as he worded it, to help protect your girls since Kevin's not in the picture anymore. Since your husband isn't protecting you guys financially.
Talk about manipulation. Woof.
So apparent.
Wow.
And so this is what's crazy. My mom was working on that insurance policy. She was.
Yeah.
With Harold and his insurance broker, Neil Cresswell.
I'm so glad you keep saying that name. Don't work with that guy. He's a bad guy.
Apparently he's retired now.
Sure.
Right? Puts out an ad
they
looking
really-
for sociopaths to kill their...
To take out insurance policies on their wives so that we can kill them together.
And I'll get just 25%. Yay.
Yeah.
Who knows?
Yeah, right. Well, hey, if it's a guarantee.
Crazy. Yeah. And so that's where God comes in, where it's just like he'll pay his due. Like you got to release.
There's a very special place in hell for that man.
Yeah.
And for Neil. Yep.
Yeah. That's so funny. Neil. I've never called him, like, for some reason I always attach him to two names, and I'm like, good old Neil. And that's what's wild was, again, a blessing of my mother's mother bear instinct at least enough. And Harold thought she was too naive. My mom fit the exact same
Yeah.
Exact
The
same
caring,
makeup.
The loyal,
Christian woman, loyalist, very like trusting,
Will
and
obey.
he probably looked at as naive,
Oh, sure.
and he can easily manipulate.
Yeah.
Who had 4 crazy daughters, and he would try to get us attached to him with financial help. Since we were struggling, one sister had him co-finance help on just getting a car to drive around, crap car.
Holy cow.
We'd have to pay him. She had to pay him. She'd transfer him and he wanted to get me to like a camp, a Christian camp, like these ways that he would only give, and you now realize, to hold us closer in bondage.
Yeah, of course. Yeah. Yep.
So we'd be loyal if any questions rose, right? Well,
Yeah.
no, he can't be that bad. He did all these good things for us.
Right.
If I start my book, a writing that I did about this was, I remember leaving church and distracting him as a kid to start driving the car. And the moment the car started to drive, I yelled out, haha, you owe me a quarter. Because this was the guy who taught me the quarter game of safety, that if the car is moving and you're not strapped in, you owe a quarter.
Oh.
Who would have thought that the man who taught me the safety game of strapping in would have been the same guy who produced some of the most horrific, painful aspects to my life and other people's. It's really interesting, you know.
Oh my God.
I think I tangent a lot because there's a lot to it.
It's good. It's good. We should talk about the case, but before we get to that, we're going to take a little bit of break.
Yes.
And we'll be right back.
Thank you for tuning into the Graveyard Shift. We'll be taking a short break, so get off the treadmill, park your car, or just grab a cup of coffee during this brief intermission.
You can visit us at thegraveyardshhift.com.
With 2 H's.
Also, you can view our videos on YouTube.
Don't forget to like and subscribe.
And email us at thegraveyardshhift@gmail.com.
Also with 2 H's.
And now, back to our program. Welcome back. We were just talking about the Harold Henthorn case and the aspect or the perspective of Laura, where she was just a baby. She didn't know her aunt very well at all. She got to know another woman who then became her aunt because she was so close to the family, as well as her mother being kind of involved in this case of this man taking out insurance policies and allegedly killing 2 women to gain the money from these insurance policies. Now we're going to go into kind of the trial aspect because you were actually there, right? Mm-hmm. And you testified. Mm-hmm. Wow.
My mom testified.
Okay.
I would be more the label. I gave a victim impact statement, but I was there.
Probably, yeah.
Different, yeah. But I was there for the pre-trial hearing as well as the real trial.
Okay, so kind of tell us a little bit about what you went through, what you think your mom went through, or what you saw your mom go through, and anybody else that was involved in the case.
Yeah, 2012 was when my mother receives the text that Tony has fallen.
And what did that mean to your mom? Like,
this was Harold texting my mother, Tony has fallen. Tony, you know, and absolutely just as much of the confusion that you're feeling is what my mom felt. My mom contacts me. I remember exactly where I was.
Wow.
And pray for Tony. Something's happened. There's an accident.
Yeah.
The next text, she's gone. My wife is gone.
Oh my God.
So the text my mom's getting.
Horrible. But
by the way,
But why through text? That's what I want to know. Why is it?
Remember that when I mentioned that he was also sending out?
Yeah.
A lot of
texts. Yeah. Like at least 100, right?
Yeah. While ironically, he should have been performing CPR right there.
Right.
This is pretty sickening when you realize when we were getting text messages.
Right.
And so was her brother. He was writing her brother. He was writing all these people. So he was getting everyone's ripples disrupted because of what he was sending on purpose.
Okay. Now, when I listened to this story, I had heard it on like 48 Hours podcast or Forensic Files podcast or something like that. So it wasn't a very large amount of the story that I heard. Mm-hmm. But from what I heard, the fall that they're talking about was that they were Tony and Harold were hiking.
Right.
And Tony fell off the cliff.
Right.
What we now know is he possibly pushed her off of the cliff.
He's convicted now, and so yes, there's no doubt he pushed her off.
He pushed her off the cliff. So when she allegedly fell off the cliff, I would think she would have hit her head so hard that she wouldn't be able to be resuscitated anyway.
Yeah.
But so why didn't he say that on the 911 call? Instead, he's quote unquote trying to resuscitate her. That's weird.
Yeah, and they were able to show that not only was she would have, they were able to track, you know, all the blood and when she first impacted, when she first hit, that there was just, she was, you know, dead.
Yeah.
Pretty the point.
Swiftly. Yeah.
And that, you know, the CPR was probably because the 911 person didn't have all the information that he was giving. My wife's fallen. She's here, you know, so they are trying to get, and I worked as a telecommunicator actually for about a year. It was with the college, again, around the same time this trial is going on.
Wow.
I was not only studying criminal justice, flying out for the case, working as a dispatcher, and volunteering
this is all very fascinating.
once a week at a prison.
Wow. Wow.
It was a lot, which is why I needed a break right now to not be in any of that realm.
And that's why you're a waitress.
That's why I'm here to be an actor.
Well, there's that too.
No, whatever I will be,
Whatever you'll be.
you know.
She's also a comedian too, guys. So if she has any stand-up, I will let y'all know.
Who wants to hear comedy over my killer uncle? Hey,
I would.
lots of stories.
That's amazing.
It'll all be told of my loving uncle.
Oh God, I'll come and laugh at that.
I know. Dark comedy only.
I know.
Death.
I have like such a sick and
I have made a bad joke before, which I feel like I need to say once, where it was like, at least he didn't molest me, he just killed my family members.
Oh.
The forensic psychologist I got interviewed by when I was 18 really wanted to know if I was molested by him.
Well, of course.
Right? Makes sense. You wonder for patterns of that too, because he was such a father figure and around.
Right.
And I was by myself a lot with him. Right.
It's so crazy. Yeah. Well, yeah, you would
And there's a couple weird moments that I did speak about where I remember being 7 and like watching a sex scene next to him, and I knew my parents.
I'm sorry, what?
Yeah. It was in the
that
movie
okay?
Pearl Harbor, and it was like their sex scene. And I remember my sister fell asleep, as they always do during good movies. And I always stay awake, but I should have fallen asleep because Harold was there behind me, awkwardly like there. And it was a scene where I knew as a kid my parents wouldn't have allowed me to watch it.
Absolutely.
But he allowed me to watch it. And I
you're
had
7.
to sit there with him. And it always, for some reason, the weird things that come to you.
Well, yeah.
But nope, wasn't molested by Harold, so that's good. Because he was too methodical. He was smart. He was that good. He knew that would be too much. I also believe he didn't have a sexual fantasy of women. He looked at them as pawns into they're nothing. Control.
Right.
Control. Because I know he wasn't sexual with his wives very much.
With Tony specifically?
I believe both, but yeah, I think Tony and him didn't have a very sexual relationship. And you look back on home videos, you can see the distance and the space, and I have a
That should be a
theory
red
he
flag.
didn't have any sexual connection to women at all. And
Do you think that he
Possibly.
hated women?
that's what's such a weird question. I wonder is there's a term of the bad connotation to feminist, and we never get over we never really label a word for a man who hates women.
Right.
We give it more to women who can hate men.
Right. Yeah. Then they are feminists. So what is a man who hates women?
Maninist.
Toxic masculinity.
That's it.
There it is.
But that is an intrigue, you know. So trial 2012, Tony falls off the cliff.
Right.
Everyone's disrupted.
Of course.
What's happened to Tony? She's gone. She is gone. The text we received trying to connect. Tony is now dead.
Yeah.
Now the shock to the system for all the family.
Yeah.
Especially her family.
Yeah.
That was their only daughter.
Yeah.
She is one of 3 kids, 2 brothers. A very successful, that's a stupid word to use because whatever we define success as, a very loving family.
Yeah.
Whether they, were doctors. Her brother is a very famous doctor in Mississippi. But that's just, I say, on his regard of being someone who later even saved Harold's life.
Wait, what?
Before he killed his own. It's so painful, the story.
Wait, what?
I know. I'm like, there's so much. There was a point Harold was visiting with Tony, Tony's brother, who's a cardiologist, like heart surgeon.
okay.
Heart surgeon.
So what happened to Harold that he
Harold and Barry's her brother. This is a wild story. He had like a new machine that he wanted to just show that he got to test, and he used Harold. Like Harold was visiting, they used it on him, and then by just testing out this machine, dumb luck. He goes, "We need to get you to the hospital right now."
Wait.
And Harold
whoa.
goes, "What?" He goes, "You're about to have a massive heart attack."
What?
Yeah.
Damn. If only he would have let him go.
Can you imagine that statement and what he feels? I just think about it, you know. And he's at peace because, in essence, the beauty is he's the one who's adopted their daughter, and he's the one raising the daughter. So
That's good.
And
Now she's got a good life.
She's doing great.
That's
so,
awesome.
Trial, I know, so many interesting mini bunny trails.
Yes.
So
and
much.
I love them.
I know.
That's why you're here.
Book. No. And so 2012 is when Tony dies. Now, the CSI brain of mine's like, we all thought, in media distorting perceptions tells us things move quickly.
Yeah.
They do not.
They do not. Nope.
Trials last a very long time. It took over 2 years for the FBI to get a case compiled, really.
Yeah.
Why? Because Tony died by falling off a cliff. Harold is the only witness. This is what we would call circumstantial evidence.
Yep.
There is no hard evidence, in essence.
No proof, yeah.
Proof. He's the only witness. Now we need to bring other, quote, sub-witnesses, such as paramedics. What Harold didn't count for is that he killed her in Estes State Park as well. Both women were killed in the same area. It's a big area, but same area.
That's a super red flag to me.
You would think he'd be a little smarter than even that. When you look back, you're like...
Well, I mean, even Ted Bundy took his victims to different places.
I
It's
think
not the same
what got
place.
Harold bit in the ass was his cockiness.
Yeah.
That he really thought he developed enough relationships and no proof that he'd be fine. And enough money because he was able to hire the best lawyer in all of Denver.
Wow.
It was,
and they still didn't get him off.
that's what she said.
Oh. That's awesome.
So, yeah, in 2012, Tony falls off the cliff. Now he's a grieving husband again.
Of course.
But this is the difference. Everyone's ears and eyes are like,
What happened? Yeah.
I think he really didn't expect a lot of us.
Probably not.
I mean, I do remember exactly the moment Tony was told me she died. My eldest sister called me. She said she just has a way with words. By that, I mean she's very insensitive sometimes, but you can't deny some of her just
Bluntness. Yeah.
And she's like, she might question me on this, but I swear she said he pushed the bitch off the cliff. And I was like, not that Tony was a bitch, opposite, but it was just her verbiage that she calls women, and he did it, and I was like, I remember
That's amazing that she caught on to it already.
well, yeah, she was always more disconnected from family stuff.
Well,
and
that
then
might be a
that
good
might be
thing.
right, where I'm always intrigued by perspective while too involved and blind to things. Well,
Sure.
I heard that and I said, I wouldn't say it that way, but I can't disagree with you.
Yeah.
And it was that sobering moment where here's someone who's supposed to be a father figure. And I was like, yeah.
you might be right.
And so then we get home, right? And now it's a discussion as family. But now Harold wants to fly.
Right.
Me, my mom, and sister pay for our flights because, again, we're financially still not that great to go to her funeral. That funeral is one for
More
a movie.
Oh, man.
The way that was conducted and controlled was creepy.
Oh, please tell me about that.
Here, I'm just trying to pay attention. He wanted me, my mom, and sister to even be technically in the house with them, with him and Haley. And we're like, and so he puts us up in his neighbor's house.
Okay.
And they're the ones who host us when we get to Denver.
Okay.
But he wants us, and he has now
As
started
close
to
as
control.
possible.
And this is something really intriguing. That first day we fly in, the whole plane ride, I remember, we're all going there with a knowing that Harold did this.
Yeah.
Not my
Did you
mom
really
took a little
know?
longer to get around.
Okay.
By knowing. It wasn't until my mom talks about a certain phone call with him that she said,
Holy crap, he did.
holy crap, he did this. When he called and said, if the investigators ask you these questions, you need to answer like this. And she was like,
You fucking did
you
it,
fucking
bastard.
did this.
Yep.
And he brought us down to his den. At this point, Harold has been a successful entrepreneur,
Yeah.
a businessman. He raises money for churches and nonprofits.
Quote unquote. Yeah.
He's been doing this for over 20 years or whatever. He has all this money because of all this.
Wow.
He brings us down to his work den that he always worked in.
Wow.
And he had wanted to show us the funeral video he made for his wife.
Oh, is this like a memorial type video or what is this?
Supposed to be the In Loving Memory montage
Of
video.
course. So what is
Watching it, I could barely watch it because it felt like he made it before she died. It's just the feeling
Oh my
I got.
God.
It was like
he knew it was going to happen, so he had to do something to
he was in 3 days supposed to be a grieving husband, maybe from seeing your wife fall off a cliff and being down there, but instead
think so.
he has the perfect funeral planned. He has a perfect video. He has a woman who was dictating us exactly where to sit.
What?
The family of Tony wasn't able to sit where they wanted.
Oh my
because
God.
Harold's woman who was leading the whole funeral, nope, Harold has a specific order. Harold's here, his daughter's here, and has everyone, my
That's
mom and
sickening.
sister had to sit in a certain point near him.
Oh.
Almost
That's
closer
so
to him,
weird.
right behind him, than her family to
Her
be
family.
like than Tony's
That's
and they couldn't be
really
right next to
weird.
their granddaughter. They really wanted to be next to, obviously, because
To
then we talked to
support.
them, and of course they're not stupid either.
Yeah.
At this point, they're at their daughter's funeral, grieving her, but also, I now know saying he did this. He did this. He killed her. And how do we play this smart?
Yeah. How do we get him caught?
Yeah, because
like it.
they now have their beautiful granddaughter
Yeah.
that he could take away.
Yeah.
And so they are in a very complex position, right? And so the trial starts technically, I would say, when everyone's ears and eyes open up and start questioning. Now, by trial starting, this Brian Moss was a huge first start to the investigation. He was a Denver local reporter. Who was kind of I don't even know if he was covering the case at the point, but gets a call about the case that he did cover the woman's fall, and someone calls him anonymous and says, "You should look into this. Harold had a first wife." But then more people call, right? So then we're in contact. Now Brian's contacting this Rishell family,
Yeah.
my family,
Okay.
and now
Because he wants to know the backstory of all of this and what happened,
what happened
to
to
the
Lynn.
first wife. Yeah.
And Harold also underestimated where he killed Tony was the Rocky National State Park.
Estes.
Guess what?
What?
Federal land.
Is it now a federal crime? Hooray! We like
Can't
when
have
federal
6
crime-
days and the case is closed with local cops.
No.
Not that local cops are bad and always do that. They sometimes really are amazing, but yes.
Yeah.
Beth, she was a incredible investigator with the National Park Services.
Yeah.
She was alongside the FBI. The main FBI agent that was on the case is Johnny Grusing. I believe I can use all their names. I think they've gone public too on a 48 hours
Oh, good.
interview. So
Good. So we don't have to bleep anything out.
yeah, we should be good. I still have their business cards and business cards. I always laugh where I'm like, I guess it is those funny connections that
Yeah.
you never realize that, like, I guess if, I need that good old FBI connection again with a weird boyfriend. No, kidding. To all the guys I date, it'll be fine. Maybe.
No worries.
I don't have control issues. Which I was dating a guy when this case broke out when I was 18, and it was not easy. And I realized I haven't called someone my partner since then because I realized that's a lot of drama
That actually.
to put someone in
Yeah.
into, and I'm pretty good on it now.
Yeah.
It's been many years where it's now not the main part of my life,
That's good.
but that was many years of the main thing of your life.
Yeah.
So that is the hard dynamic where now it's like you just go on with your life and
Yeah.
you act, I guess, or try to remember
Semi-normal.
someone normal. But with anything with loss and change, as anyone will realize out there, whether it's a murder trial or a death in the family, or you exhibit something or you go through something extremely painful to your own side, you're a victim of something, you're never the same. I will say that. You'll never be the same. But in a side of why we talk about this is one, I do recommend talking to people.
Absolutely.
People who understand it.
Yep.
I had a lot of good outlets come to me, such as a prison thing that I then got to find once a week to go and talk to people
Wow.
in prison with who just seem to understand dark natures of the human spirit a little better with me than being around party college students
Yeah.
that didn't get what I was going through.
No.
I felt pretty alone then. So you're never alone. There's always someone who might understand a bit of what you're going through.
Absolutely.
So if you're watching this, reach out. That was
good.
boom. Yes.
That was real good.
That was
So talk a little bit more about like the trial and how he was convicted.
Yeah, I can do this a little more logistically instead of IQ versus EQ. I know I go back and forth. The IQ, here we go. The trial starts in 2012 by the death occurring.
Yeah, of
It takes
Tony.
over 2 years to build the case. This is now when Park Services and the FBI and local news and everything else and the interviews are starting to happen. And they have now the FBI is knocking on doors like me and my mom's. And now they're uncovering. This is when things get discovered. In 2 years, this is when
Goodness.
things are discovered, the big ones, that Harold never had a job, that he was not a successful entrepreneur,
Oh, I got chills.
that he has not been this businessman,
Well,
which, by the way, he did very well to fake
oh, of course.
with all of us, everyone.
Of course.
But instead, they can't trace back any taxable income, any aspect of a job until my dates are kind of foggy here, so I don't want to misquote, but it was in the 90s.
Yeah. Okay.
Right. So again, still, like, this is time around Lynn when they last were able to track that he really had a job.
Right.
Which means he was making money off not just insurance, or his money income was off insurance policy. But the big one was that Tony was a doctor.
Oh, so he was living off of her income.
He got her to move her practice from Mississippi to Denver. He was the control of the finances.
Yeah.
So she was still working. She had a very successful practice, as well as I think he made different investments. I also believe he had 3 insurance policies, I think, at least totaling her death. He stood
Her
to
death
earn
alone.
$4.2 million,
Holy crap.
over $4 million off Tony dying.
He had 3 life insurance policies on Tony alone? Oh my God.
Yeah, like
That
3
is
separate.
horrifying.
Yeah. No, Cresswell. ING. I say this, usually wouldn't say that the whole company's at fault.
Yeah.
But this is the same company who did then my mother's insurance policy. The same man. And when my mom wanted it canceled over her own life,
Yeah.
it took over 100 days to cancel this policy on my
my
mother's
God.
life. And we were living in this state of fear, my mom and
I bet.
of Harold might have the means. He's not arrested.
Yeah.
This is when Harold, they're building a case against him.
Yeah.
And now knows at a point before he was arrested that people started to fall off being loyal to him.
Oh, yeah.
Right?
Good.
Right? And so
glad
at the
for
point
that.
my mom said she will no longer, and wrote like a letter, you need to cancel this policy. I think that was a big point for my mom
Yeah.
to now be like, it was when the FBI then knocked on my door during this 2-year part of the trial.
Yeah.
They're searching for evidential aspects
Yeah.
against his character.
Okay.
A big piece for them that they were able to get was, I think, finding out that there was an insurance policy on my mother's life.
Yeah.
Telling her, that's when they came to our door. Seeing that obviously the genuine reaction, my mom had no idea.
Yeah.
There was an active policy on her life that Harold stood to earn. Harold, the sole beneficiary, stood to earn over $400,000 on my mother's life.
Oh my God.
This without him being married to her, without anything.
Just mind-boggling. How can you take out a life insurance policy on somebody else? That is the first mind-boggling thing that I have questions about, because I've heard about it happening before, and it really doesn't make any sense to me why somebody else should be able to stand to
Gain from your death.
Gain from your death. Yeah, I don't understand it. But let alone the fact that you're not even married to this person.
Yeah. This was his ex-sister-in-law.
That's insane to me.
And her signatures.
Did he forge them, or
Do we remember when I just said earlier a red flag when we didn't move to Denver?
Yeah.
Was this moment she was on the phone and it was Harold and Tony wanting to gift her insurance policy.
Oh.
And she was working on it with Harold.
Okay.
And he got controlling and weird, and my mom backed away.
Okay.
My mom did start to work on a policy because Harold said she should because she needs to protect her daughters. He formatted it as a policy that if she died, it would be protecting her daughters in financial,
quote unquote. Right.
because we weren't getting financial help.
Yeah.
While then she later saw his sides of control and didn't go through with it. And this is when she was on the phone call with Neil Cresswell before Tony's killed, by the way, saying, I don't want to, I'm just going to do my own thing. And he says, they were trying to do a nice gift for you. You've cooked your goose on this one.
Oh my God.
That's what he said. I'll never forget because it's a weird statement to say.
You've
cooked your goose.
on this one.
My mom, again, obviously something that stuck out to her.
That's old talk.
Yeah,
That's
he's
some
in his
really old
80s.
talk.
Makes sense. So
All right.
she thought it was canceled at that point.
No.
She thought they didn't go further with the with things.
Yeah.
Looks like at that point he went on to complete it without her knowledge, to continue her signatures, and go forward on an insurance policy
And
that
this was
years
allowed?
later
That's insane.
allowed, because again, maybe not blaming ING, Neil Cresswell, the insurance
Yeah.
person, completed that with him.
Yeah. Well, he has. It sounds like he had.
He must have to have 3 women.
some way to gain from this as well. That's insane.
Now Tony's dead. Now the FBI's building a case. They're going through many interviews with people who are on both sides of the family.
Yeah.
By the way, a big part of when they find out that my mom had an insurance policy, you think they're thinking she's an innocent victim, which she is? No, they're also thinking, did
She
she
had
have a
something
love
to do with
affair
it. Yep.
with Harold? Because she's a divorced woman. And Harold had a lot of phone calls with my mom. Because my mom's a loving person who looked at him as a brother, and he
Yeah.
was helping support her in a hard divorce and a hard loss of finance.
Yeah.
And instead, so luckily truth does prevail, character prevails.
Yes.
And it easily showed. My mom is such an angel, and that came out.
Good.
The one news article did paint her as a possible, and that broke my mom. When I talk about what media's harm can do,
Yeah,
that article
absolutely.
that came out later was retracted on defamation of character.
Good.
But, I remember that day, and so insurance policy on my mom's life was a huge part in the pretrial hearing. Pretrial hearing is where you bring in, as from my knowledge and what I went through, certain key points of evidence that they want the jury to hear. But this is when there's no jury right now. This is when there's still a judge and aspects that need to be admitted into the court to be approved on both defense and prosecution. Both know that this is evidence being presented.
Right.
The main things they used was my mom's insurance policy was in the pretrial hearing. It didn't later get actually brought up or allowed to be heard. The jury didn't get to hear that. Interesting.
Wow.
That was hard for us to get.
That's
But then we
crazy.
have peace that there'd be enough to.
Well-
The next was admitting the first wife's death, which is still ruled an accident in the coroner's office.
I.
That later, a beautiful coroner, her name was Laura. She was a big part, and also she had a friend contact her. She was a coroner in Denver.
Oh.
Had a friend contact her, say, a woman at my church named Tony has died, and I believe her husband did it.
Oh.
Can you look into her autopsy, or her first wife, I think. So this is the wild
first wife,
nature of
yeah.
connections. Some of these things that were big parts to bring into the trial.
Yeah.
That this then coroner goes in and looks in and finds out about the first wife's death. She was able to go and reverse that death from
Homicide?
accident to no, we
No?
don't have that power.
Oh.
It's even now not a homicide. It's unknown.
Oh.
But even just changing that
from an accident to
from an accident
unknown
to
thing?
a
Yeah.
vague aspect of, it then was able to also be admitted as the jury can hear not just all about the first wife's death, but now have testimonies. We had people from all those years later, from 1995, now 2020, my goodness, was it 14 when the trial was? Because it's like
Okay,
2 years
after. Yeah.
After.
Okay.
My mom's the date queen. Don't quote me sometimes on dates. It's not that I'm trying to be discrediting of
Yeah.
information, but my brain, I know what's strong suits, details, and I can give you everything. But when it comes to dates, but 2012, I know that.
Yeah.
And 2014 seems like the court date, because 2015, I remember being like, convicted Harold.
Wow.
Oh my gosh, right?
Yeah. Right on.
Unless it was
Finally.
2014, and now I'm second guessing. But
Don't second guess yourself.
you're right. I got to work on that.
Yeah.
So, Lynn's case was now admitted in the trial.
Good.
The jury gets to hear all about Lynn's case,
Yeah.
which is the story I gave you some points of, some of the aspects that happened, like the plastic getting put under her head, the
really
state
weird.
she was in, the way he was acting when the paramedics came up on scene. Paramedics from 1995 were on trial all those years later. The police officers who ruled that case an accident in 6 days were on trial a bit and held accountable to some of their mistakes of not discussing with our family certain aspects or looking in deeper. And some felt very apologetic, but there was that feeling of guilt. If you had done better, would Tony still be alive?
Right.
If we as a family on the Rishell side had done better questioning, would Tony still be alive?
Right.
a second thing that was big in the trial was Harold's attempt to kill Toni before she died, which was called the beam incident.
Wait, what? Okay. I'd love to hear about this.
This was when they were at the cabin.
Oh.
This was a time before he killed Toni.
Uh-huh.
While she was down below the deck, he had apparently been above it and thrown off a beam.
Oh.
And
What?
if she had not seen something and bent down, the moment she like saw something, it would have killed her.
Yeah. Yeah.
But instead, it hit her on a certain place. She literally did become hospitalized. She was injured, and I think there's later testimony talking about her mom and her having a conversation saying, "You're not safe. That wasn't right."
Right.
So that's when I think Toni probably had to start figuring out. And her mom and I think at that point didn't trust it. Like, and yet Toni stuck. There's some really weird stuff about that. But bottom line, this beam incident became a key point of evidence of an attempted murder before he did murder her.
Oh my goodness.
And the insurance policies. It's a huge part, right? To bring up the insurance policies. They brought up Neil Cresswell on trial about some of that. And as well as a diamond expert was brought on trial. Why, you ask?
Yeah.
Interesting. Toni's body was found, but her diamond was missing out of her wedding ring.
Wait, what? How does that happen? That doesn't make any sense if you fall off of a cliff.
Band on, diamond out.
Yeah, how does that work?
Because he's a greedy bastard and probably still wanted that part.
Of course. Or
so who knows?
So are we thinking that he took it out so he could sell it later on?
It's possible.
Yeah.
The diamond expert, that was
All
so
that
intriguing part for me. I was like, this is better than movies.
Right?
I'm sitting there like, now they have some diamond expert. Good job, prosecution.
Yeah.
Bringing in the grandiose of why the diamond is so rare on that. This is the big point. The diamond expert to say that this diamond found months later in the dirt.
What?
In the area she died. That clearly was placed by Harold later back at the scene.
Of course. But
why did he do that?
Yes, why?
Because once it was missing, he was quoted as they started putting heat on him.
Of course.
If they just found this diamond, they'd lay off me.
I don't know about that, but okay.
Yep. And so I'd like to say there's a lot of cool things that the FBI can track. Mm-hmm. They were able to track his cell phone going back to that scene multiple times after Toni died. The place where she died. Wow. Multiple times he made that hike. A really treacherous, weird hike. They found a map marked with an X of where Toni died.
What?
That was a big part of evidence that they had.
Whoa.
Yeah.
Why in the world? Ugh. God,
Yeah.
some people, I just...
Yeah.
Dang.
Lots of weird little bits of things that just all kind of became key moments of hopefully jury hearing. This is not a grieving husband. This is a man who methodically planned out this woman's demise, his wife's death.
Yeah. To gain money from it.
Yeah.
Ugh.
Yeah, and the law of chances is a big word they use, is showing the insurance policy. As we would call serial killers, tend to have a pattern, showing the patterns.
He definitely did.
Yeah.
And this is why we say in the true crime world, the husband did it. Because the husband, he always does it.
A lot of the time. Would be a first suspect, which, it's really interesting.
So then Harold is convicted, right? How did they finally find him to be guilty of this?
During the trial, these are all certain things that, in there, by the way, if one jury member doubts it, the trial...
It's a hung jury. Yeah.
So for two families, there's faith that truth would prevail.
Yeah.
But fear on... He had a good defense, too.
Yeah, well, he spent a lot of money on his
he could afford the best lawyer. Yeah.
It's so sad.
And it was hard because there was a lot of, in essence, they call it circumstantial, but I know even the prosecution would say, this is evidential. Let's prove to you why it's not just, this is hard evidence here.
Yeah.
It's not just circumstantial. This is evidential aspects. And so, lo and behold, he's convicted because the jury really had, I think, enough to work with when it comes to understanding a picture of who he really is. And that's a pretty sick, calculating, apathetic human being who took two beautiful women and looked at them as a means for his benefit and constantly looked to benefit off of their demise, to use and abuse people around him, to manipulate and be the master of the stories, and in essence didn't win because people luckily still have enough discernment in this world to see through that, and the jury then ruled him guilty on behalf of Tony.
Yay! We like those stories. All right. So Laura also has some paranormal stuff to tell us, but we're going to get to that right after this break.
Thank you for tuning into the Graveyard Shift. We'll be taking a short break, so get off the treadmill, park your car, or just grab a cup of coffee during this brief intermission.
You can visit us at thegraveyardshhift.com.
With 2 H's.
Also, you can view our videos on YouTube.
Don't forget to like and subscribe.
And email us at thegraveyardshhift@gmail.com.
Also with 2 H's.
And now, back to our program. So we're back with Laura Rishell, and we're talking about the Harold Henthorn case. And she's going to tell us a little bit about her paranormal experiences regarding this case, which are extremely interesting, I'm sure.
A little
I don't know
bit.
much, but...
Yeah, I mean, I never even thought of it. It wasn't until meeting you and you asking, like, it's interesting because I've always been really tentative about certain experiences. And I didn't think I had any, but I did realize before you that there was a very, obviously what we'll talk about, interesting thing that happened to me when I was very young that later didn't get connected until after all of it. So I'll just dive in. But I've never used the word, I guess, paranormal, or is it? I mean, yeah, it was definitely out of this world. So that's how I would define it, something otherworldly. When I was very young, I was in a lot of pain, and I always had growing pains when I was, makes sense when you see how gigantically long my legs are. I didn't grow torso well, but my legs were growing. But I experienced, growing pains and leg pain and knee pain. And I was young, I was little, but it just felt like I remember my skin being
stretching and bones stretching, probably,
and crying, being uncomfortable. Yeah. What's interesting is there is that even a foreshadowing of it being in my legs and being in my knees. And I've always had feet pain as well, even now. And it was growing pains a lot, but then it was, for some reason, my brain is telling me it was like a hangnail. I had like a foot pain, like a toenail or something. It's like a hangnail. So my mom came in and she prayed over me, and this is when I was very young. And she prayed over me, and we went through our prayers, and then it was over my toe, and she left, and I was tossing and turning. And I'll remember kind of getting in a very light state of sleep. And this is, again, when I would discredit this information being older and more abused to the real world. And I think this only happened to me because I was so young. I think there's something about youth that
absolutely
brings in the other realms that aren't, we're not bogged down by the reality that we see here as we get older.
Yeah,
or discredited takes that away, I guess, being around people. I don't know, whatever blinders and perceptions we put on as adults is intriguing to me. Because even now this happened to me, and yet I find
still question it.
I question it more as time goes on, because, where's my proof we need? But the proof is, and all we have sometimes is your experience. And so I woke up, I'll never forget, to an extremely bright light.
Wow.
I mean, words can't explain the light that it was.
Yeah.
And yet there was a figure behind the light, and it was my Aunt Lynn.
Oh, how do you know it was her?
That's what's crazy. Is I was only 1 when she died.
Yeah.
Granted, I remember, I guess, seeing pictures of her.
Sure.
I knew it was her. At that age, when I was still too young to really identify this as, it was just Lynn. And it's like, rarely do I ever vocalize this story, but it was my Aunt Lynn there in this crazy light, and I remember no fear but total peace. This feeling of, that's Lynn. That it was just like my like something so familial on an energy sense, and so healing and peaceful.
That's awesome.
And just the vision of it. And I remember no communication and just all that feeling and going to sleep.
Oh,
That's what's
cool.
interesting.
That's
But I woke up and I toe was completely fine. And I was like healed.
Wow.
I'd been able to, one, go to sleep peacefully because I was
Yeah.
and then two, be healed and then talk about my experience to only one of my sisters, I think, because I was it's one of those things you, even as a kid, I had enough. I've always been a darker kind of child.
Right.
I think God gave me that because I believe a couple reasons now. I needed faith to get me through
Absolutely.
a lot of the trial and tribulation I would experience as a female dealing with a lot of the things, especially the case with Harold.
Yeah.
And just, I mean, I've gone on different realms of spirituality, but that's always been something that I think guided me probably in a grounding nature to handle difficulty.
Good.
I'm good at handling difficulty.
Yeah.
I think due to even maybe that experience
Probably.
of giving proof to the other realm. Who knows
Yeah.
that life isn't,
It's not final.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I think so. I
Yeah.
think that's really it. And so what's interesting about that is I decided to open up years later after the trial now and bring up to Lynn's sister that this happened to me when I was a kid, that I saw her sister and they're very Catholic, but now I was even nervous, but be like, this happened and talk about my feet pain. She says, did you know my sister always dealt with feet pain, always dealt with pain in her sleep, always dealt with that too as a kid, and
Wow.
arthritis. And that was a big reason the court also said it wouldn't make sense that Lynn would go underneath that car. She was
Yeah.
struggling a lot at that time taking medication
Yeah.
with her knees being in pain. So why would she even contort her body to get underneath the car?
That doesn't make any sense.
And then I ended up not realizing until I took a bath all these years later that I have like a little birthmark on my foot. So it's kind of those sweet moments where they call
That's
them angel kisses.
Yeah.
So I was like, oh. And so I think it's just an interesting thing that I saw her. She was my story for that before I even knew that she was murdered.
Yeah.
So there's something really interesting to me about visually seeing that and having an experience, and she being a beautiful soul that was actually killed. During the trial,
Oh.
I did have night terrors and or 3 like demonic experiences.
Whoa.
Dark.
Well, one, it sounds like she's looking after you. Whether you can feel her or sense her at all or not, she's always going to be there.
Yeah, and I believe that like there's that energy.
But tell me about these demonic experiences.
Yeah, I've been around some really dark energy where lack of hippie as I can say that, but energy is real whether you're spiritual or not. Ask a physicist, an atheist, whatever it is, energy is a real thing.
Yeah. It can't be created or destroyed. It's always there. That's scientifically proven.
Ugh. And one of my sisters has also, we all deal with grief differently.
Sure.
This is something I would say I dove into the case.
Okay.
Another sister dove into drug addiction and consumption. And I've been around that 10 years with that and really hard, dark stuff with
Yeah.
that. And I know she's been through her own traumas and things that really was a big reason that I'm sure we all don't know how to cope with things, and who knows her journey. But
Right.
I do think there's a realm to that too. There's some really eerie realms with the addiction side and what you open yourself up to.
Absolutely.
I was around a lot of that energy and in essence almost a very demonic possessional side that I witnessed her go through with eyes rolling in the back of her head, convulsions, like eating, dark, like very terrifying experience around my sister with it. And it was sometimes they were triggered by something with her. She would say with Harold and some dark realms there. But for me, there was a point right where I said that he didn't cancel the insurance policy on my mom's life for like 100 days.
Yeah.
And that's when you fear. So there was, I think, I don't know if you would call it psychological or spiritual, but maybe the feeding of me being afraid he was going to take my mom's life.
Yeah.
My mom was the most important person in my world.
Absolutely.
Fear, but I would have terrible night terrors of Harold and times, and I'd miss college morning 8 a.m. class. Maybe I'd use them as an excuse. Who knows? I would have a hard time still going to class in college because it wasn't just the cases, the trial I was rescheduling for. I would be hard to get out of bed.
Yeah.
Because I'd have really dark night terrors.
Yep.
And yet I've had moments where I'll never forget laying there in my bed and my cat, I left my door cracked. And he wouldn't meow to get out of the door or not. He'd have his, which usually I'd rather have my door shut when I sleep.
Of course.
And I like to sleep with a face mask.
But cats are such assholes, and they have to get in or out of places.
But they're also very interesting energy beings.
are.
There's something a lot about cats.
Oh,
They're actually
absolutely.
disruptors of energy in ways too.
Yeah.
They can go right through it, right? And not really.
This is why I want a cat.
Yeah, there's something cool about them and terrifying.
Yes.
Owen, at this moment, was, for some reason, I'm a deep sleeper, a very deep sleeper too.
Okay.
Another thing. And I hear this just loud, it's like cat meow thing.
Like growling meow?
Kind of, yeah,
Oh.
deep, weird. And I just like wake up and look down to the noise, which was at my left. And I remember seeing, he was like meowing up, and above him was this. It's so hard to explain, again, where words can't give you an image that you're seeing.
Right.
But it wasn't of this world. It was not a figure. It wasn't a person this way. The only time I've had a pleasant experience was my aunt when I was really young. And then I've had 3 very unpleasant, deep, dark moments.
So scary.
And those were all interesting enough around the trial time.
Yeah.
And I haven't had one in about 1.5 years now or 2.
I wonder if they were sent to you to kind of scare you into possibly helping Harold get off in a way. You know what I mean?
It's where you think if you're a threat, then things are more if you're not a threat.
Exactly. They won't come to you if you're not a threat, but you apparently were a threat.
Yeah, and I know I was a big threat to probably my sister's healing, in ways. And it was around this time that it's the Harold case and my sister's addictions.
Yeah.
And those are 2 very dark realms I was involved with.
Yeah.
And I look back now because I'm the first time kind of away from
Right.
and taking a breath and be like, wow. And it was this crazy that, again, you can feel like you're all tough. You see something like that, I mean, you want to like shit your pants. I remember being like so frozen in terror.
Yeah.
And then just curling in fear and for some reason saying the word Jesus. And then my cat jumped up and like jumped in with me. He's not a cuddly kind of cat. Jumped in and I just like grabbed him and I just closed my eyes with that one.
So he was trying to protect you, it feels like.
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah. And you saying Jesus, I think that was good because he's your protector.
I do agree. And I've had this certain cross that was there and I took it down in that the night that I was packed. That's what's crazy. I didn't take it down after that night. I had taken it down that night, that cross, because I was planning to move. There was a lot of stuff going on. And so definitely still have that cross in my room.
Good.
I'm less superstitious as needing it right above my bed. It also makes things a little awkward if you want to be intimate.
Yeah. Yeah. A lot of guys don't really like that a whole lot.
It's a heavy cross.
It's a little
I also have a feeling like, what if Jesus kills you? Like, you're on the bed and then the comedy bit where the bed's moving and then the
Exorcist
cross
style.
falls off and then you get this heavy cement cross that falls on your head. But I guess I've never talked about, especially publicly, those weird experiences where you have spiritual, otherworldly aspects. But I definitely went through 3 dark entity things during this time with Harold.
It sounds like, so the first one was, it sounds like it was happening during the trial. The second one was during like your sister's
One was after.
addiction?
One was done. And when the trial's been done. Because I was here in LA.
Oh, that's interesting.
Yeah. But it was also like finally, I think, being away from it. But
So what happened in the second experience?
over top of my head.
Oh my God.
It was
Oh my God. Was it the same?
this was like a facey thing.
Ooh.
Yeah. The first thing was like, don't want to overuse this word, but that's the best word, was like an energy,
Like a swirling
kind of energy.
Yeah.
And when I see my cat and I look up, it was like it saw me see it.
Yeah.
And literally, I'll never, just slowly goes up
Dissipated?
into the ceiling, like into the into the ceiling, kind of just.
Oh my God.
Slowly. I've become definitely a being that's much more in tune with energy through all this, whether it's a person's discerning people's energy,
right,
as in their character. I love the Enneagram or whatever. It's a good diving into traits of people and stuff. And I would say it's so interesting how paranormal activity and witnessing it, I also wonder if it takes the right eyes and perspective and viewpoint of openness. Or empathy.
Yeah.
And there's that idea where you wonder, am I too open to realms? Hence addiction.
Yeah.
I think when you open up realms that maybe shouldn't have been maybe perceived in this reality because it'd be too much.
Yeah.
At least that's the feeling I got around my sister when you'd see those aspects.
You said she fell into addiction. How did that happen exactly? Was it just from like grieving?
No, it was prior.
So what happened?
It was before the murder trial, but to speak, plainly, because and she's sober right now and doing well and
That's awesome.
Yes.
That's very awesome.
And you'll watch this maybe, and I love you.
Oh.
And you're doing wonderful. And we all have a journey to take.
Yeah.
And just understanding to anyone else also struggling with addiction.
Yeah.
We all deal with trial and tribulation very
no matter
differently.
what it is, yeah.
I use humor to cope, clearly.
Same.
And it's still not that great coping sometimes.
No.
It's deflection. It means I'm not
Dealing with
it properly sometimes. Military people also get that. There's certain correlates to people who handle things. Other people handle it with substance and needing to coat pain that way. Others
Kinda
with
drown it out.
apathy and no emotion.
Yeah.
Whatever it may be, we all have different realms. And so I know with addiction and being a sister to it, right? Like I was technically a sister to addiction, as in my sister is a very different being as an addict versus who she is.
Right.
Very different. And the addiction side is a very dark, like capable of dark shit, capable of realms that you don't want to be around, where I started to understand the paranormal side, where on an interesting story, I was in my own home. Why, if you understand why hippies, as you may call them, light Palo Santo, or they call it holy wood.
I do that.
I do it too. These ideas of, I call them sage, Palo Santo, why we do a bunch of things to
Incense. And things. Yep.
Smells, sensory, olfactory ideas that kind of replenish, rejuvenate, repurify a space. Spaces are full of energy, whether they are from a past person who has died or a cat that you have in your space. Or addicts, I think, dive into sometimes microcosms of death.
Yeah.
So we're talking about murder. There's a reason there's a lot of murder tied to things that go on that realm, addiction, overdose, darkness. And also, I think so my sister went down a path of this pretty early on, I think, in a lifestyle and getting probably around the wrong people who didn't know how to help her cope, or the wrong tools. We are doing the best we can with the tools we're giving at the time.
Yep.
I believe that.
Yep. Absolutely.
It's helped me forgive anyone who I've resented,
Absolutely.
such as my parents, such as Harold, such as my sisters, and myself.
That's really good.
They're all doing the best they could with the tools they had at the time.
Yep.
Not saying that in Harold's regard. I have, believe it or not, forgiven him because of the definite...
Which is really great for you.
And because of what I believe forgiveness means.
Yeah.
Not giving someone else free rent in your head.
Yep.
You can no longer do that. You don't have time to waste, guys, on people who are fucking up your life.
Yeah.
Who really hurt you. And if they do, it doesn't mean I'm saying get over it. It means we'll never be the same.
Yeah.
Something that's truly hurt you.
Yeah.
But you can have the choice to choose to be a victor instead of a victim.
Yep.
And
And that's very important to
It's so important.
know and remember.
that we don't have to stay in a victim mentality. I'm not saying it's not wrong to be there a little bit for a time and feel it's okay to feel. You learn a lot.
Yeah.
So in her journey in this energy field of that, it was really interesting because I was around a lot of different energies, whether an apathetic energy of heralds, which was really interesting to be around on someone who now I'm realizing in a different perspective is very void of emotionality.
Yeah.
And
That's very sociopathic.
I had to be around a man who I thought was a father figure to me, and now pretend and be around him and realize you intended to cause me the most pain I've ever to experience and take away my mother.
Yeah.
And you rippled. I use this word ripple because there is a ripple effect we all have,
It's like
whether
the
good or
butterfly
bad,
effect. Yeah.
the butterfly effect. I guess that's where
It's
maybe
a
that.
similar thing, yeah.
And so, an energy, if we're all energetic beings, what energy are you putting out, good or bad?
Mm-hmm. And what effect can it have on other people?
Huge.
Yeah.
This is the weird part of him, wanted a bad effect on people.
Yeah.
That's what's hard to get your brain around. We do a lot of bad things as humans,
Yeah.
and we do it unconsciously.
Yeah.
I can't say that word ever right too well, but we do
You
it.
said it beautifully.
Good. The lisp is challenging when I get passionate or a beer too much. I think, and that was something even that helped me was understanding I don't need substance. I also don't, I need to deal with this in a different avenue than sometimes other avenues, you know? So if you're also an addict, I do believe you shouldn't use substance at all. Stay 100% sober to try to work on the brain power, but some people can handle it and need to stay away from too much television watching.
Yeah.
Addictions,
Or video games.
Video games.
It comes
Addictions
in all
come in
forms.
all forms. We all can be fucking addicts.
Yeah.
So don't think you're high and mighty
No.
against other people who represent it and the homeless people and all the realms that have going on.
I mean,
I've
even spiritual people
so
can-
much. Oh my gosh, the
Fanatics.
That's something I know this case was meant to do for me with my the Christian perspective.
Yeah.
I am a spiritual being. I did call myself a Christian. I still love Jesus and I go to a Christian church,
should.
and yet I see a lot of the faults of the systems and the dogmatic standard
God, I'm getting
that
chills
has
right
given people the prison that it's put them in conditionality of the lack of freedom to explore, to grow, and to also get stuck in things that they should have never been stuck in because it was sinful and bad, and or you're wrong and we're all complex humans who are trying to live a life and understand it. And so here we are, and there's women who I wish, my aunts, I wish were given maybe a little more empowerment in the female realm to have enough outlet to save their own lives. I don't know, right? And I believe Tony died for her daughter in ways. I believe she did have some discernment after that Beam incident that he was not as loving of a husband as she thought.
I'm sure she figured
I believe
it out.
she figured it out. There's some proof to a part of her banking that they released that she was starting to try to, in one small avenue, separate her finance from him.
Oh, that's interesting and very good.
I think she started to,
She was going to run.
who knows?
Oh, wait.
God.
So that was part of the case too, I think, that I had heard was she was planning on leaving and he found out about it. But then he tried to get her to reconcile with him. And during that, like the hike was supposed to be their reconciliation, but she maybe had a feeling that something was going to happen. That's something that I had
Oh,
heard.
yeah. She definitely, you see the last video footage of her, eerie about technology.
Yeah.
Sad to watch.
Yeah.
He surprised her with an anniversary trip.
To
He
Estes
called
Park.
to Estes Park
Oh, Lord.
and got her clients to be dummy clients that she thought she had a full day of work and instead had been a loving husband and called her person who sets up her appointments with. She was an ophthalmologist, an eye doctor.
Oh.
Tony. And the last video was someone sweetly filming as he surprised her for their anniversary at the doctor's office. And what you see in her is not a excited wife.
She looks scared, huh?
She doesn't just look scared. She looks like put off that he's there. And there was a testimony that she would stay later after her clients were gone and just play a game on our computer.
Oh.
Not really want to go home.
Oh. So, wow.
So you do know that there was obviously so many probably avenues of navigation with this complex marriage of in this beautiful daughter that she loved. I know she gave her life for her daughter.
Oh, yeah.
I believe it. I was with her daughter after that funeral, right?
you were.
Harold, weirdly enough, asked me to go home with him and her after the funeral of Tony. And at this point, I'm sitting there like, you killed her. Mm-hmm. I'm going to sit in the front seat with you while your daughter's in the back seat and her mother's funeral.
Yeah.
We've released the balloons. It was a beautiful spectacle. No, it was really weird. A lot of people didn't like that funeral because it was so unemotional.
Oh.
The funeral video that he made us sit down and watch where I said it wasn't even...
Yeah.
It was like he made it. The energy you felt was like he made it before she died was because it wasn't a glorification of her life.
Right.
It was a proving of their perfect life. It was him proving how great they had it. He was in almost every photo. It wasn't her in baby pictures and her. It was him, Haley, and her. Him and the perfect picturesque. He had a fake tan. He had his hair dyed. He was a charismatic man. He wanted to look that they were the perfect American family because some of us Americans to him are stupid and won't see through that.
Oh, sure.
Which is sadly what kind of happened.
Yeah.
That's why he got away with it so long.
Yep.
Because we see a entrepreneur, successful businessman, a Christian man in the church, loving, quote, husband and father who was so involved with his daughter and took him on trips and all these things that we all have to have better discernment from the media, from ideas of people's perceptions.
Yeah.
Have your gut instinct.
All
The
I wanna
supernatural is
say-
beautiful because it gets you to that realm.
Yeah.
To understand that there's other realms out there.
Think outside the box.
Yes.
That's what we try to get you to do here, especially on the Graveyard Shift, is we have to find the other aspects to the case that we hadn't heard before to figure out what everybody's mindset is that is going on. And Harold, this is for you.
I'm sorry, that moment. I love that you say that. I'm like, yes. You can eat a bag of dicks, Harold.
Yes, and Neil.
And Neil Cresswell.
I'm never going to know his name. Screw those
And anyone
guys.
else who helped, and the weird funeral lady who was too weird and not emotional with the families and stuck to Harold. Who knows, right? But yeah, I think that is beautiful that your podcast does is getting people to listen to weird stories that are the truth, that are, from my perspective, what happened to me.
Yeah.
And also the different realms and networks that we all deal with.
And nobody can discount your experiences. That's
right.
That's my take on all of this. Is like I've said before, I can't say whether somebody has experienced a ghost or not, but I'm not going to discount their experiences because
Be open.
Be open. Absolutely.
Yeah. And that's the trouble is we wonder, for me, I felt was my sister too open to those realms that made her
Quite
fall.
Possibly.
And
she wasn't ready for it.
She wasn't ready.
Yeah.
I believe that because I found parallels living in LA when she did now. She lived in LA when she was 18. Oh. I got lucky to live in LA, now 2 years ago. And have enough maybe discernment and strength and not strength, but the word that I would use. There is different avenues of that where it was too much. And so those realms can be a lot where I pray and hope still I have enough balance is the word where the logistical side and the emotional invisible, I don't know, whatever side with both those sides. And so here I got the side with the trial and all of the things that went with a murder case and knowing how to deal with being the being who is good with darkness.
Yeah.
And yet that means I had to know how to also be okay with light.
Yeah.
And humor is good with light.
Yeah.
And my aunt giving me, I guess, a foundation of light, seeing the paranormal that I don't realize maybe connects that. And then being okay with darkness means you might give yourself enough preparation for darkness.
Absolutely.
I think there's a lot that people underestimate on, say, healthcare was all about once you get cancer, now we try to deal with your cancer instead of preventative measures.
Right.
So I think in this world, we can work on preventative measures, whether it's us. This, to me, is why we do this. This is a preventative measure. If you guys are listening, you're doing good to be students of a preventative measure. Whether you're intrigued on the aspect of murder and crime, to me, that's because you're intrigued with preventing possible hardship.
Absolutely. It makes you more aware. It makes you kind of question your surroundings or the people around you. I know I have done that a lot.
Yeah.
Where, I'm out by myself. And it being a woman in the city of Los Angeles, you become hyper aware, especially if you have been touched by the paranormal side. You're constantly looking.
And this is also a city where you can't deny the energy is insane, which is why it makes sense that my sister started with her hardships here, because there's so many people here. When you look at realms, whether it's a small town, that's an energy of very similar energy where people correlate to an environment to conform and question that and be a disruptor or not. That's something. Or you don't know where we are human and we want belonging. And yet there's so many entities of pull.
Yeah.
And there's a lot going on.
Yeah, and there's a lot of not great aspects of that pull. So you kind of have to be careful what kind of people you surround yourself with.
And carefulness, I think is prevention, is being okay to be strong in yourself, your foundation, your authenticity, but having some things where I now have things to, I call it a joy book for myself, or things where I'm not naive in the sense that I still need realms to help me with the trauma.
Absolutely.
Of some things where if I feel off, I need, just last night, to burn a smell that makes me feel a little safer when, if I'm going to sleep and I don't feel as sound mind, then...
You and I are a lot alike. We got to hang out more.
None of you are crazy, right? And talking about this is where, oh my gosh, I'm not alone. And then that's why I'm big about being someone to be a voice a little bit more. And it's okay, like, to seem weird, because you're not as weird as you think you are sometimes. There's people who we have to develop things to be okay, whether it's burning a weird stick because it smells good and you put it around your body, you're like, all right, ready for bed.
I feel good. Also, I have my crystals right under my pillow.
Which have true energy or not, but that used to be a trigger for me, crystals, because I used to think that's demonic energy, that's dangerous. That's what I remembered my sister being around. So I attached that to bad.
Oh, that's funny. That's really
And now I'm okay with understanding some good, and it's all about definitely the mind.
It's your intention.
It's your intention. So
the stones aren't bad.
Be open. If you're too logistical right now and you're listening to the murder mystery because you're the brain like me that was like, you like stuff like this and the hippie side of things, there's a balance of realms, whatever word you want to give it. Don't be so attached to words as well. My goodness. Be
Can't
open.
Label anything or everything. Just don't label anything.
The truth prevails. Harold's in prison. Women are dead, though, because of it, right?
Yeah.
Life is lost.
Yeah.
And we need to understand that talking about things is important.
Yeah.
This is a beauty in your platform. And being able to discuss these things together, and the paranormal, whether it's seeing dark stuff and you're not alone if you experience that.
Yeah.
Whether some people write it off as sleep paralysis and being frozen and dealing with that. All of it's not easy.
Ooh, have you dealt with sleep paralysis at all?
Well, I'm curious on what still people define as sleep paralysis, because I know when I've opened up a little bit about what I felt with the demonic side, or whatever word you give it, the dark vision, that energy, the demon face, second time, and the third, again, another moment where it's in front of me. Again, this is what's wild. All 3 times, I'm a deep sleeper. Ask anyone who slept with me. I'm joking.
Where you would find them,
My
I don't
cat is what I meant. My cat would tell you I'm a deep sleeper, mother.
Love it.
And what I would say is, why would a deep sleeper as me just jump up, like open my eyes.
Yeah.
Because there's this overwhelming energy in front of me, whether
Yeah.
it was that, or that again. It was terrifyingly dark.
It is terrifying.
And it really was. And over my headboard once. Oh, so scary. And the beings that I decided to open up to about it would question that. That's just sleep paralysis. So I'm intrigued by
I
that.
don't know. Were you able to move?
In the beginning, no, but my brain and my perspective said it was due to fear.
Yeah, sure.
And the absolute shock to your brain, your
Right.
system.
Right.
If you see something that your own reality and perception is so far off of a perception you're used to on a daily basis, and now you're envisioning something that technically shouldn't be possible.
yeah. Well, that'll
That
kind of
discredits your
paralyze
own mind,
you.
and that'll paralyze you.
Yeah.
Or you question it, or you wonder, and then you speak about it maybe to others to either.
Yeah.
This is the intrigue about opening up. Are you opening up to a being who discredits you,
Right.
puts you down, says you're stupid, and that's not possible?
Yeah.
Or are you opening up to people who understand it a little bit? That's the difference also of trauma.
That's very true.
Your story and your perspective is also, I think, your purity.
Yes, it's your truth.
It's your
Don't
truth.
ever question that.
And also, don't just give it to anyone.
Yeah.
Sometimes
Don't cast your pearls before swine, as they say in the Bible.
Yeah, and this is why I wouldn't be on this show or doing this aspect if I didn't trust the being and the question asking and the person behind it, because you do need to protect that. That's
Yeah.
preventative of yourself. So this is all, in essence, a conversation about mental health.
Yeah, absolutely. Therapy is not a bad thing. If you need to talk to somebody, find a therapist that you trust and talk about stuff. Everybody's got something they're going through. I even have stuff I'm going through. I need to find a new therapist.
Yeah, but it's a beautiful statement just then.
Yeah.
You're going through this and you want a new one. Like
Yeah.
that discovery. And that's totally the beauty of the world we live in now, is to have avenues like this to tell people
Absolutely.
that it's okay.
Absolutely.
We're all,
it is okay.
No one's
yeah.
perfect. This
We're all
concept
struggling together.
yeah.
And you got to find the help where you can. So, I mean, find your help and go seek it and talk to people. Talk to whoever you can. Lean on your friends, but also don't rely too much on your friends, because they will get tired of it. So you need to have a
Yes.
therapist who is unbiased and will listen
Huge.
to you. It sucks that they want payment, but they
Makes
are very
sense
important.
sometimes.
I know.
To be honest, have never had a therapist.
Oh.
And it's an intrigued thought, because I thought, where have I maybe, quote, word vomited on people that didn't deserve?
I definitely have.
But luckily, where I mentioned the saving grace for me was a prison organization
see.
that did give me that avenue. That was not friends in college or not people that didn't connect with me.
Yeah.
But I was sharing my story for the first time to a group of people, and then they shared theirs, and it was a co-facilitation of different avenues of grief and disturbance, and they gave me a lot. I'll never forget sharing my story and having a male offender ask, "Have you forgiven him?"
Ooh.
And at that
That's
point,
interesting.
I was like, "Bitch, how dare you ask me that?"
Yeah,
No.
I would have.
Have I forgiven him? He killed but then
Yeah.
it's like, it's still, you go home that night, you're like,
Why was I asked that question?
here I am talking to them about forgiveness and how to heal.
Yeah.
And how do
And I
I heal?
haven't-
And
yeah.
and so that's in essence therapy. That was an avenue, spirit, God, source, whatever word you want to give it, gave me an avenue of healing with. And I still should seek out new avenues of healing.
Absolutely.
As we all should, because there's new avenues of hurting
Absolutely.
as we go on this life.
Yeah.
And so if you're not looking for avenues of healing, you're only developing deeper depths into
wounds.
deeper wounds and programming into hurting.
Or opening up old wounds and making them deeper. It just,
Yeah.
yeah.
So
You got to find ways to heal, for sure. Thank you so much for being here. Thank you for talking to us about the Harold Henthorn case.
much more. I'm
There's
sorry, it's a lot.
No, it was a lot. But if you want to read about it, there's a book here that Laura brought.
Oh, right.
Called The Black Widower, and it is actually about the Harold Henthorn case, and mostly about Tony, though, right?
Yeah, so I'm not going to lie. It's interesting. I brought it as a reference point because it's been on my bookshelf. I have never fully read this. to tell you, when this is your life for so long, it's hard to dive in sometimes to a different person's perspective. And there's perspectives that you almost are like, they don't really know. And yet I haven't even fully read this, but it is a story that gives some insight and some actual pictures. I like that he added. And I do think this author, he's Michael Fleeman, a New York Times bestselling author. I think he has a good perspective of beauty for the story, gives some really cool pictures of my aunt and some of the case. And I'm open for questions or things if we put, there was moments that.
Would you be open to somebody contacting you through like Instagram or Facebook? If they have any questions, or do you want to give out your email address?
Yeah, email is probably better. Okay. On a standard, I would rather keep it rather than if it's a couple about the case. But if you're also on a more of a basis of some clarity is fine, but also if you need some help in your own position, who knows? I'm referencing, but
do not go emailing her to attack her. That's just wrong.
Please.
That would just be wrong.
I don't need that.
If I do get back that she's been harassed for whatever reason, I'll
get Johnny Grusing, the FBI agent, on you. I have connections. But
there we go.
Yeah, I mean, this is a cool outlet. There is a lot of I look pretty fat on one of the episodes, and that still hurts me to this day. It's fine. But 48 Hours was a really great outlet.
Yeah.
The media can help a lot, and it can hurt a lot.
Sure.
But for us, it actually helped us fly out. When I said I was flying out, 48 hours paid for me and my mom to go out there. One, because obviously we were a big integral part of providing information and video footage and all that. But that's a good thing. If you're into the case, you can go on pretty much Google Harold Henthorn, and you will find as much as you want on the case. But I recommend 48 Hours did a great 2-series episodic aspect over it, or 3, because I think 3 now, because they came back with the investigators after many years after it was finalized.
That's awesome.
FBI agents and stuff on it, and that's really cool. As well as Discovery Channel did a cool special over it, which is hard and sees a lot of the home video footage in a different perspective and dateline. So you can find what you need. The book I haven't read fully, but it's all dives into the depths of your weird family trauma.
Wow, that's insane. Wow, it's been a pleasure. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you so much for having me. It's good. Sorry, it was the word vomit of the century.
No. This was an amazing case, amazing perspective on it, being that you were the niece of one of the victims. It's just horrifying, and I can't imagine being in your shoes. I really can't. But I know that you are healing. If you have not healed fully, you are definitely on the road to healing. And the fact that you've forgiven him is so big.
I think even his daughter has, and that's wild. She's a remarkable human. And,
that's good.
And it's these moments, again, forgiveness. I think it's Mark Twain who has a beautiful statement about forgiveness. And I'm going to butcher this quote, but I do think it's a good way to end it and look it up to get the beautiful way it's formatted by him. But forgiveness is the scent that the violet gives off when the foot has crushed it. And it's about that, anything you deal with in life. I'm a huge silver lining person.
Yep.
It deepens your soul and your character and everyone around you to see how you handle it. So I really think that forgiveness is the most selfish thing you can do.
I like that.
Someone said that in prison with me.
Oh.
And again, these things, I know. You can find beauty in homeless to prison to open yourself up. And there can be some beautiful light in the dark places you expect. And
I love that.
And there is a true beauty that forgiveness is selfish. I could not keep these night terrors and this anger and festering resentment with him if I wanted to be successful and move on in my life.
Nope.
It doesn't. True. Forgiveness does not mean forgetting.
Nope.
People who think that's a naive statement. Forgiveness is powerful and it's palpable, and it is the scent. It is the the thing why people, it will be a ripple. And so the way, and so is light. And no matter what darkness you go through, my story is barely dark to other stories I've heard with other people and other murder atrocities of loved ones who've lost people.
Yeah.
And so it is that side where it's intriguing, and we're so intrigued with how people can create these heinous acts. Right. But there's also the depth of families will never be the same. Yeah. Your heart and your soul will never be the same from heinous acts of whatever's happened to you as a victim, whether it's deceit, rape, betrayal, pain, whatever it may be. And yet you can prevail and become resilient and understand that it can be something that will never be the same in your life, and yet you will be able to, with time, heal a little more. Yeah. I think, time doesn't heal all wounds. Maybe it does help.
It does help, yeah.
That's the point. Yeah. And so just move it forward and find a way to move it towards goodness rather than darkness.
Very good point. Well, I've
get me stopping.
I've really enjoyed having you on the show, and I don't want to stop talking to you, but we have to stop because it's been a very long time.
I know.
And
a lot.
If you have any questions, you can contact Laura at her email.
Yeah,
which is
Laura Joy Rishell.
And it's at
Gmail.
There you go.
Yeah, Laura Joy Rishell at Gmail. That's the way you can do it.
And if you want to contact us here at the Graveyard Shhift, it's the Graveyard Shhift at gmail.com. That's with 2 H's. Go on to our website, the Graveyard Shhift with 2 H's.com. And you can find us on Instagram, the Graveyard Shhift, again, 2 H's. We're also on Twitter. It's just Graveyard Shhift, no the. And we have a Facebook page now. Again, same name, the Graveyard Shhift, 2 H's. And I've been Nicolette, and this has been Laura Rishell. And thank you so much for joining us on the Graveyard
Thank you.
Shhift. See you in the graveyard.